Greetings, everyone. Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, and welcome to the latest episode of Mondays in MMORPGs. Today marks episode 46, so we are full steam ahead towards episode 50, which will happen, in November, I guess? Yeah, we'll see. But it's been a crazy ride the last few years. And today we're going to be talking about new worlds versus old worlds and how the games of yesterday are, in some cases, trying to catch up with today, and what the games of today are focusing on. Before we get started, do me a favor. If this is your first time here, make sure to check the playlists here on YouTube, watch the other 45 episodes in this series, and if you like what you see during this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you get updates for all the future content that I do here on YouTube. And there's a lot of different things I do here on the channel, so take a look around. Game reviews, cooking videos for the Lotro Cooking in Real Life series, the Monday Musings, this show, the Project Ramen stuff, book reviews, lots of different things. So you'll be sure to find something. And of course, don't be afraid to smash the like button or the dislike button. Leave a comment below. All that stuff helps the algorithm, and I appreciate everybody taking their time to chew through the latest vodcast/podcast as we go through Mondays in MMORPGs. So, New Worlds, yeah, let's talk about New World. So Amazon finally released a hit game, and it has been a long time coming for them. They have struggled as a studio to get something out of the gate. They have had a lot of misses. I mean, there was the Crucible, which they pulled. There was the supposedly canceled Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth project, I should say, which that may still be in the works. I talked about the rumors during last week's episode about how there were some job listings that suggest that they are still working on a Lord of the Rings Online or Middle Earth inspired MMORPG, but at their California studio as opposed to outsourcing it to a third party studio. Rumors only. And of course, New World itself, which has gone through multiple iterations and multiple delays since it was first announced. I think the most interesting thing about New World is the fact that it had such a troubled history to get it to launch. But now that it's here, it's proving to be, at least for the moment, a knockout success. I mean, they hit this out of the park, so to speak. Obviously, it does have its issues, and I'll be talking about the game in its entirety in a separate review. Probably later this week, I'll be doing a first impressions video, and then probably towards the end of the month, I will do a more in-depth review after I've had some more time to sink my teeth in. I'm about 30, 30. I'm about 30 hours in right now. I'm level 25. I've done a little bit of everything. I've already posted some videos here on YouTube of some of the things I've been doing. I love the fact that there's really no fast travel. I mean, there is, but there's no mounts. And it's a very interesting way of doing things. And there's no group finder, which means you actually have to talk to people and communicate. But um, I think one of the first things for me that made me not really want to care about this game was the fact that they were trying to be hardcore PvP. And when that announcement first came, they found out that, oh, people really don't want that. And so they backtracked on that and decided to make it more of a PvE oriented game and have some other content in it. Then they brought on, I think this is the most interesting thing to me. They brought on a tribal consultant, and that tribal consultant came on and said, oh yeah, your game is racist as fuck. You need to do something about this. And so they had to go back to the drawing board with a lot of their ideas and sort of redo that. I don't think it is that way now because the way they've done the storyline is such that the island is agnostic, so there's really no natives living there. There are simply the people who have washed ashore over the years and who have been living there for, in some cases, centuries or millennia. So troubled history, lots of false starts, lots of moving deadlines, and pushing the game back further and further. Even after closed beta a few months back when they said they were going to release, and then like, oh no, we're going to push it back another couple months to the end of September, and then everybody was all nervous that they were going to push it back again, and it launched. Now, obviously, they have some server issues, which just goes to show you. I read a brilliant article on PC Gamer the other day that it doesn't matter who you are, even Amazon, who runs some of the biggest, crowdsourced, or not crowdsourced, but biggest crowd cloud, not crowd, cloud servers in the world. Even with all of their networking and potential and everything they've got behind them, they still had hiccups on launch day, and that's just going to be something that every game faces, regardless of anything. But I think it goes to show, if you've been paying attention to the pace at which they've been working on iterating changes to that, getting more servers up and running, expanding things, the way they've been handling the launch, in my mind, this is the smoothest launch of any MMORPG I've ever seen. Obviously, there are huge queues on some servers. Oh well, pick another server. Like, they're offering free server transfers in the next 2 weeks. So it's, if you really just want to get in and play, you don't have to be on a specific server. You can pick a different server, go there, and then transfer somewhere else later on in the pipeline because it's going to be free. I don't think it's an inconvenience at all to do that. But again, I'm probably in. I feel like I'm in the majority of that. I feel like the only ones who are complaining are in the vocal minority, because most people have done that. They've gone to the other servers that have opened up and said, "Well, we're just going to do here, and then we'll meet up if we want to go somewhere else. We can go somewhere else in a couple of weeks when things calm down a little bit." So it's been a fairly good launch. It was a successful enough launch that Jeff Bezos himself came out and said something about it here the other day, um, praising the success of the game and the hard work of the team and everything else, and talking about the stumbles along the way and how that those challenges led to a better product in the long run. Which some of that kind of sounds like your typical, you know, failure is the best way to succeed type of commentary you're going to hear from certain entrepreneurs. But overall, I would say that New World has proved that um, it is, in fact, a good game. And now they just have to see if they can maintain enough of a player base to continue to be a dominating force in the market. Um, it has potential, I will say that. Like I said, I'm not going to review the game really in this. I'm talking about a lot of things regarding the game right now, but I'm not personally reviewing the game in this video. That'll come later. But it is a good game. It's a fun game. It has a lot of potential. It also has some hiccups. But if they can manage to smooth those things out and to keep forging ahead and building goodwill with the community for fast turnarounds and really doing everything they can to make this a fun, playable experience, then I think they've got a winner on their hands. If they can, if they're willing to stick around for the long haul. I mean, you can look at games like Elder Scrolls Online, and I guess this will be a segue. Actually, I can segue into the next part of this, which is old worlds, because now we're going to start to talk about old games. Elder Scrolls Online, when it first launched, it had a somewhat rough launch. Elder Scrolls Online, also considering the fact that when it first launched, it was subscription only, and then when it went free to play, that pissed a lot of people off, and there was a huge uproar from people who had previously thought that this was going to be the next big MMORPG with subscription. Um, but it has since turned it around, and I was reading the other day that ahead of the Deadlands launch, which is November 1st, so here in about a month, they're currently boasting over 19 million lifetime players. Those are not numbers to sneeze at. And this goes to show you that here's a game which had a rough start. And if you remember correctly, if you go back to the development process for Elder Scrolls Online, it was much like the New World development process in the sense that they got midway through the development and then they had to go back to the drawing board and redo almost everything from scratch because of the fact that in the middle of development, another Elder Scrolls game had launched, and so they wanted to get things updated to be more like the most recent game. So this is another game, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure someone will say something in the comments below to correct me. I believe Elder Scrolls Online took 9 years to develop from start to launch because of the fact that they had to go back to the drawing board at like midway through and redo a bunch of stuff. I can't remember the exact timeline because I remember sitting in a conference at a presentation with Matt Fear, and he was talking about the development process, and that has stuck with me over the years because it was a rocky process to get it to launch, and then after they launched, they bungled it pretty badly with the free to play transition, and lost a lot of the goodwill of the player base. But in the years since then, Elder Scrolls Online has managed to come back around and sort of dominate the Western PvE landscape as far as AAA MMORPGs go. I mean, one can argue that yes, World of Warcraft is still a force to be reckoned with, and of course we have crossovers like Final Fantasy XIV. But most people that I know of, when you think about a Western game, because Final Fantasy XIV is going to get into the Asian side of things, even though it's heavily played in the West. Elder Scrolls Online is the big one these days. It's not World of Warcraft. Maybe 5, 6 years ago, World of Warcraft was still, dominating that peak. But these days, Elder Scrolls Online is continuing to be the game. And one of the reasons is because they've just done a really good job at continually adapting to the player base's needs and just creating tons, and this is really important, tons of content. Like, I think Elder Scrolls Online is the one game I can point a finger at and say they produce more content than any other MMORPG that's in production today, in my mind. All the expansions, all the DLCs, continually cranking out new stuff all the time. They make it so that it's worth it to either come play the game free to play or pay a subscription, get access to all this stuff, or pick up an all-inclusive pack, that has the latest expansion plus everything before. They've done a lot of different things to get people to come in and play their game, and I think that just shows the power of an older company and an older game evolving to the times. But they aren't the only ones who have done a good job of evolving. A couple of other games that I want to talk about today, which are older games that are managing to stay, I don't want to say competing with new games, but they are maintaining their presence as a AAA game, even though they don't have millions of players like they used to. Are Star Wars: The Old Republic and Lord of the Rings Online. And I mention these because I do play both of these games regularly. Every year I play usually, Lord of the Rings is the one game that I never. Actually, both of these games, if I really think about it, both of these, I don't uninstall these games. However, I play Lord of the Rings Online way more frequently than I do Star Wars: The Old Republic. Lord of the Rings Online I play every year, usually 3, 4 months a year, sometimes 4 to 6 months a year. My brother and I traditionally come back every winter and play that as our winter gaming session. And this year we actually didn't. This year we're in Star Wars: Old Republic, which is the first time we've played this together in a couple of like maybe 3 years. Now I played last year. I played a little bit, but just the base game and then getting my max level character, running him through all the most recent expansion stuff. Um, but I want to talk about these two games for a minute because on the one hand you have let's look at Lord of the Rings Online first. They're revamping the legendary system. So, for those of you who know this game, the legendary items and weapons system first was implemented in the Moria expansion, which was the first expansion for the game all the way back, I want to say 2009, 2008, 2009, somewhere around in there, a year or two after the game launched. It was the first expansion. And epic items, legendary epic getting confused with my words here. Legendary items and weapons have been a mainstay in that game since then. And I want to say 2, 3 years ago, they started talking about a revamp that they were wanting to do, and they finally started to roll that around. And that's been on the test servers recently, and it's beginning to impress at some of the various MMORPG blogs and news sites. But this is the case of a game where Lord of the Rings Online is another game that has done a really good job of continuing to push out lots of good content for their player base. Even though it's a really old game at this point, it's been out since 2007. And also considering the fact that it actually finished the main storyline several years ago, in the sense that they went to Mordor, they threw the ring into Mount Doom and finished that storyline. And so everything that's been happening since Mordor has been content related to some of the stuff that came before and some of the backstory of the dwarves and so on and so forth, which has allowed them to continue to expand the map and continue to get players coming in. So they've done a good job of that, but I feel like, for example, with the revamp coming with the legendary item system, we're starting to see them trying to modernize the game a little bit more to make it more comfortable for players who are new, as opposed to only the veteran players who have been playing it for a long time. Also, they obviously have the legendary servers, which they're spinning up every few months to kind of recapture that nostalgia audience, which is fine. We see lots of companies do that, whether it's World of Warcraft Classic or EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, Lord of the Rings Online. Um, going back there and trying to recapture the glory days does capture a certain amount of audience, but that doesn't create new content for the game and it doesn't modernize anything. So I feel like what they're doing with the legendary item revamp is trying to keep the game as modern as possible, and they're trying really hard to work towards making this game friendly to new players. And there's also the fact that there's the new Lord of the Rings Middle Earth show coming out next year, and I know when EG7 first bought Standing Stone or bought Daybreak, because they didn't buy Standing Stones, but they got Daybreak. One of the big things that supposedly was happening at Lord of the Rings Online is that they were going to be revamping the graphics for 2022. Now, I don't know if that's still on the table or not, but if it is, because that was what they told us, I think 2 years ago now at the press release, or a year and a half ago, something like that. Um, Year and a half ago. I'm thinking about the timeline now. It's close to 2 years, I guess. I guess January, so it's more than a year and a half. Whatever, timelines don't matter. It's been a little bit ago, and supposedly that's still true. And if that's the case, then Lord of the Rings Online is looking like it's preparing to capture a new wave of players, because there's going to be more people who watch this new show from Amazon who may not have seen the movies because they're a newer generation of people, and they might then go to the internet and try to find a video game for the Lord of the Rings, and then they're going to go, oh, there's already a Lord of the Rings game that's out, and look, it has modern looking graphics and all of these other things. The one big thing I think would be cool for Lord of the Rings Online if they could do it. I don't know if they could or if they will. Would be to push it to a console as well and have crossplay like they do with Final Fantasy 14, because that's one of the reasons Final Fantasy 14 is as big as it is because they've made it so that you can play with your friends in an agnostic format. It doesn't matter where you play. You can play with your friends, whether it's on the PlayStation or the PC, wherever you want to be. You can meet up with your friends and hang out and play. And I think that's a brilliant way to make your game as accessible as possible. But it remains to be seen if Lord of the Rings Online is going to do that. But big thing is the legendary items change and keeping the game modernized so that it looks good to new players. And I think also with the new producer they brought on board last year, they've done an extremely good job of just producing tons of client-facing content. The constant dev streams now, because it used to just be Court of the Rings, where Cordovan, I think is his name, will come on and stream Lord of the Rings Online. But now they've got world builders, they've got Severin, the executive producer, they've got all these different faces who are now being a part of their Twitch streams and on Facebook and YouTube and so on and so forth, which is helping to keep the game in the forefront and in modern times, so to speak, because people do want to see that. People want to see the faces behind a project. They don't just want to see a nameless corporate, you know, speak. So anyway, moving on to Star Wars: The Old Republic. This is another game that's been out for a long time now, 2011-ish, I think. It's been out for like a decade now, I think. Um, they are revamping the combat system this winter. This holiday season is what they said, which should probably be December if past launch dates are to be taken into consideration. And this is another case of an older game that is trying to modernize itself to stay up with current times. Because let's face it, Star Wars is a hot commodity. You've got Disney Plus pushing out all sorts of new Star Wars content. You've got animated shows. You've got series. You've got Boba Fett's coming out this fall. We had the Bad Batch just came out. We got Kenobi's coming out next year. We got the third season of The Mandalorian. We've got more animated shows. We've got the Star Wars. I forget what it's just called. Some sort of short animated stuff the other day. Tales, maybe is what it's called. I haven't watched that yet, but that's out as well. So Star Wars is a hot commodity, and it remains a powerful IP. There's also multiple other, open world and other types of Star Wars games in development. And to this date, Star Wars: The Old Republic is the only MMORPG in the AAA space, or otherwise actually, that is a Star Wars intellectual property. And while it doesn't necessarily take place in the same time period as, say, Luke Skywalker, that New Hope period, it still provides people that ability to log in and have a Jedi experience, or to play a smuggler, to be a trooper, to be a Sith Inquisitor, things of that nature, a bounty hunter. By the way, uh, Bounty Hunter right now is so popular because of the Mandalorian, and so now they've got like on the cartel store. My brother literally just bought his character a pack because he had a bunch of coins saved up from the years, and he bought himself. There's a Mandalorian armor set now because of the Mandalorian show, and it's a very cool armor set that you can only get on the cartel store. It's Boba Fett's helmet basically, and it's got the antenna, and as soon as you uh, when you draw your weapon, the antenna comes down and gives you your targeting reticle, and it's got these cool retractable blades on the handle on the left hand, the gauntlet. I mean, and this is all due to the popularity of the additional items that are in that franchise and pushing people to play the only MMORPG on the market. Now, they also recognize that this combat system was from 10 years ago, and so they're modernizing that, and the changes coming up this year are basically making it so that you can take abilities from the opposite side of your tree. So originally, like for example, if you were playing Jedi Guardian, on the light side you have I forget, the Knight and the Sentinel, or maybe that's what it was, and then on the other side you had the Sith Warrior, which is Juggernaut, and I don't remember what the other one's called, but they were basically mirror opposites of each other. Two tank types and two dual wielding tank types. And whatever side you chose, you were locked into those abilities. And the new combat changes are going to allow you to take abilities from the opposing side and get kind of based on your alignment choices and everything else. So from a role play perspective, one of the ways that they described it, which I thought was very apt, was like you can play a Sith who has infiltrated the Jedi Order, and you're just working your way up through the Jedi Order as a Sith, and so you have Sith abilities while you're completing Jedi quests and vice versa, as opposed to being locked into the abilities that you started off with because of your specific class choices. And also, they're unlocking the ability to take all sorts of different weapon types. So previously with the Trooper, as an example, you were always locked into that two-handed cannon. And now you're going to have the ability to use any of those weapon types. You can be a dual wielding. You can be your guys from the Bad Batch or something, or the Clone War troopers. You could be Cody or Fives or whatever. You can actually have the ability to create the trooper that you want, as opposed to being stuck to a trooper with just a two-handed cannon weapon. All of these changes are really cool, and all of these changes are great ways that they are continuing to update and modernize their game as opposed to only push out new patch content. Now, obviously, Star Wars: The Old Republic is not as big of a game as it was, 10 years ago when it first launched, but it does have a healthy enough player base that it continues to push out new content, new expansions, and changes like this. And obviously, they're trying hard to capture the ongoing Star Wars audience and the additional audience that is going to continue to come because Disney Plus is not slowing down at any point in time. I just saw yesterday that Disney is planning to launch 11 new Star Wars movies in the next 5 years, I think is what they said. Might have been the next 7 years, I forget. But it's like 11 new movies over the next few years, so a couple of movies a year maybe, but also your shows and everything else. So Star Wars: The Old Republic is poised to be the go-to MMORPG within the Star Wars space for people who want that Star Wars experience. And if they can continue to provide players with a modernized experience, that's going to be a good way to capture on that. Now, the one thing they can't do, which I would say that I have the Galaxy of Heroes on my phone, which I've been playing for, I want to say almost at least 2 years now, maybe longer than that. The one thing that game does, which is a mobile game that they do, which they can't do with um, the Old Republic, is that this game is timeline agnostic, so they can bring in characters from any timeline, and so it's called Galaxy of Heroes, and it's every hero that's ever existed in the Star Wars space. Dark side, light side, Sith side, Republic side, doesn't matter where they come from. As long as they're a canon character, they're in this game. And the cool thing is, like earlier this year when Bad Batch came out, we started getting Bad Batch characters in the game. So like every month they would introduce a new character from the Bad Batch. Like even Omega, the little kid. Um, they've introduced those characters into the game, and as they continue to produce new shows, like when Kenobi got announced, they introduced General Kenobi to the game, even though they had other versions of Kenobi. So there's it's in terms of MMORPGs, Star Wars: The Old Republic is another good example of a game. Looking at these games that we've talked about, Elder Scrolls Online, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Lord of the Rings Online. These are games that are older games that have managed to continue to stay up at the top in terms of the modern day player. Also because they have some IP recognition that doesn't hurt, obviously, because they are the games that are known within an IP space. Elder Scrolls Online, Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars: The Old Republic. I mean, these are all IPs that help that. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of looking at new games that are coming out like New World and old games like these other ones that are trying to stay modern as well. Now, what remains to be seen moving into next year is whether or not, swinging back around to New World again, whether or not New World can continue to produce the type of content that's going to keep it as a mainstay main player. Because you also have, I mean, Amazon has another game coming out next year, Lost Ark, which they chose to push back. Um, Let me double check that. I'm 90% sure. Pretty sure Lost Ark is an Amazon. Amazon is publishing. Yeah, it's published by Tripod Studios and Smilegate, and it's just a Korean port. Um, but this is another example of another game coming out next year, and whether or not Amazon can continue to create or publish games that are going to be relevant in next year. It's also going to be very interesting to see what happens with new games next year. Like, are we going to see? Because the one thing, this is very interesting. I was very surprised that Amazon Studios went with a buy to play approach, because a lot of other games from a lot of other studios go with the free to play approach and then just heavily monetize everything in the cash shop. And obviously, Amazon has a cash shop for New World, and I guarantee you they will put things in it later on that affect gameplay. But so far, it's only cosmetic, but it's also just launched. And they had a really big pushback from the community when they tried to beta test things like XP potions and fast travel potions and all this other stuff. So remains to be seen how they're going to do that into the new year coming up next year with their new game. But as it stands right now, um, I think that New World is proving to be one of the best launched new MMORPGs in a long time. There's really nothing else coming out anytime soon that could be compared to this game. So I think we're just going to ride this out for the rest of the year and see what it does moving into next year. Now, one other old game that I haven't really mentioned yet, and I do want to mention in passing before we wrap up the episode, is Final Fantasy XIV, because obviously Endwalker comes out mid-November, and that is the ultimate, last expansion for the storyline that is or started with A Realm Reborn. So it's been quite a few years now of them going through, I think, 5 expansions now to get to Endwalker, and this is another good example of an older game maintaining its presence and building an audience even as they've gotten older, which is a rarity for most MMORPGs. Because most of them peak within the first few years and then they kind of trickle off and have their hardcore audience of whatever it is, 100,000, 200,000, whatever. But Final Fantasy XIV has proven to be like Elder Scrolls Online in the sense that they have grown and continue to grow every single year. But what remains to be seen is what they do next year, because they've said this is the end of the storyline. So are they going to then build a new MMORPG? Are they already building another MMORPG? Um, what are they going to do with Final Fantasy XIV beyond this point? Are they going to create a whole new storyline, wreck the world, and start it from scratch again? It remains to be seen. But that's another good example of an older game that is maintaining its presence in the modern space. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for this week's episode. This is episode 46 of Mondays in MMORPG. And if you liked what you heard today, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get updates for future content. Don't forget to check out the other episodes in the series. This is episode 46 in the series, so there's a lot of other content that you can look at. And we will, of course, be coming at you again next week with episode 47. Don't forget you can join us in Discord. Links are below. Drop a comment. Let me know what you thought. Like, dislike. It all helps in the odds and the algorithm. I appreciate everyone sticking around and watching the video to this point, taking 30 minutes out of your morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is that you're listening to this, car ride, jog. It's all good. Thanks for everybody for listening in, and I will see everybody next week with whatever's new in the world of MMORPGs. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun gaming.